Welcome back. In the last video, we learned about the basics of how AI works and where you may encounter AI. To recap, Gen AI is able to produce content based on detecting patterns or bias in the data it was trained on. It's important to know that it mimics training data to make up something new. We then practiced using Gemini, which is a type of Gen AI you have access to at Bates. When you asked Gemini to create an image of a clock at 10, was the response exactly the same as mine? No. Gemini outputs are like rolling thousands of loaded dice. Some of them are connected. They're more likely to roll in certain ways, but the output is never the same. That is the variability in generative AI responses. No response is the same unless the programmer has given it specific instructions otherwise. For example, the response to the question, "What model are you?" referring to the type of the underlying large language model which is being used. That is a canned reply, specifically hard-coded. So it won't vary. It'll always say, which Gemini model I'm currently using is displayed at the top of your screen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So another property of generative AI is that it can make things up. So some folks call this hallucination. We tend to call it bullshit. So recall that generative AI programs learn by being trained on a very large data set. This means a lot of the knowledge of Gen AI relies on this data. If you feed a program thousands of cat images, it'll be able to probably generate a cat that looks slightly reasonable in the future. But what if you want a very specific type of cat, say a Sphinx cat, but you trained it on very furry cats instead? Is it going to be able to generate something without fur? It'll try, it might try, but that best guess could be total bullshit. It's inevitable that an AI program will be biased due to its training data. And a data set can't always be completely representative. Images of cats will only be limited to certain types of cats that are available. Generative AI programs, therefore, will produce a guess or bullshit, the response, to try to make the user happy. Another word besides bullshit and hallucination is mirage. In the case of the clock, it was so focused on 10, because I said 10, that it decided to double down. It decided 10, 10. So not only is the hour hand going to be on 10, but the minute hand would be on 2, representing 10 minutes. Now, this minute hand is on 9, so it's 10:09. And the other problem with this is that even though it looks like the hour hand should be at 10, analog clocks, actually, the hour hand moves just a little bit as the minutes progress. So this hour hand should be just slightly past the 10. So this might be an easy clock to spot as BS. Bias is also a property of generative AI. And sometimes this can show up as harmful stereotypes. For instance, there was one news article that talked about someone asking for images of autistic people, and generative AI programs were found to usually generate images of white men with red hair. This is likely because the training images tagged as autistic consisted mostly of images of neurodivergent white men. This can also manifest in racial, sexual, and other harmful stereotypes that fail to represent reality. This bias can also appear in the style of writing and associations between ideas or words in large language model generated text. Another way bias can show up is in the desire of generative AI to please the user. This is a feature, not a bug, as generative AI is a product that is being sold and must be useful to the consumer to be profitable. However, that desire to please can lead to reinforcing misleading beliefs or making up citations to support arguments. The other thing that people think about a lot with AI is privacy, data privacy, both at the point when the model is being trained as well as when it's being used. At the point of model training, for example, your social media posts and data and websites are all scraped by AI companies to train their models. One question is it was it ever an intention of your data, even if it's public, to be used in that way? In addition, every time you interact with generative AI products, that interaction is a form of data. This is why it was important to note that when you're signed into your Bates.edu account, it says your Bates College chats aren't used to improve our models. That way you know that your personal information or academic information that you are querying about is not going to be in their larger data set, or at least in their model. Some large language model free accounts also offer an option to opt out of data sharing, but you may need to go and find these in your settings and do it manually. Usually you have to put in the effort of opting out of having your data shared. One large language model, DeepSeek, was considered a solution for controlling your own data because it can be run locally without sophisticated hardware. However, then you are responsible for your own cybersecurity. And in January 2025, hackers exposed a data leak in DeepSeek, exposing over 1 million sensitive records. The environmental costs of AI are also significant. AI needs large data sets and tons of computational power, particularly during the training and development phase of a large language model. Data centers require a lot of electricity and also, in addition, consume unsustainable amounts of water for cooling and generate large amounts of carbon emissions. Continued development and widespread use of AI systems will have an impact on environmental conditions of our planet, and it will be significant because of the large amount of electricity and water that is being used. Some solutions include educating individuals on consequences so that we can regulate our own personal use, and also advocate for policy which encourages research and development of alternative technologies or more efficient computing or storage, etc. Finally, a practical and pressing concern of many students we hear is the issue of plagiarism and academic integrity. I want to start a little bit more broadly first, which is to talk about some of this as a broader intellectual property question and issue. It arises directly as a result of how AI, particularly AI, is trained. And much of that training data that we have available that's public, for example, Twitter data and websites, did we ever, give permission to have it used in this way? If I had photographs of my artwork up, does that make it okay for then it to be used as training data for generative AI? So since Gen AI models typically mimic these data, also, what about the product? Whose intellectual property is the product of generative AI output? Is it the programmers? Is it the people who made the training data? Is it those who used generative AI to query and obtain that content? This is a very active area of conversation and debate, but one common strategy is to require citation of AI usage. This can certainly mold classroom guidelines and policies, but also professional standards. There are new statements out by professional societies who affect and set the standards for future workforce. And they also may have additional guidance on whether generative AI is permitted to be used as part of a publication, or what are your ethical requirements during working with it. Finally, the other thing to think about is it being used in a way that interferes or promotes your learning growth and assessment? So in academic settings, one of the goals is to get accurate pictures of where students are in terms of their learning. And so how much is AI masking our ability to either grow or to help notice if others are struggling or are growing? Bates College does not have a universal policy governing the use of generative AI. All of the above concerns and more we didn't get to may inform instructor and student approaches to generative AI used for any particular course or employment role. Our goal in this workshop is to foster understanding of generative AI, to equip students with the awareness and critical lens to understand individual classroom and professional AI usage guidelines, and to analyze your own use of AI at Bates in ways that are consistent with those guidelines, and support your learning and growth as a critical thinker and as an intellectual community member. We're so excited to have you here at Bates, and let's continue this conversation. After the video, you'll have a short quiz and a reflection. Look up the policies in your FYS class for AI. Is there a policy yet? If not, maybe that's because your instructor and you all are going to talk about it next class, what the policy is. But have a look at some of your other classes as well. What are their policies? Why are their policies set the way they are? That can lead to really interesting pedagogical conversations with your instructors, and you'll get to know them more and their philosophies more. Thanks again for joining us.